The first thing Elena Marquez learned inside Rafael Veyra's mansion was that nobody cleaned the mirrors. They dusted the marble floors, polished the brass handles, changed the flowers before they wilted, and wiped rain from the windows before the water could dry into marks. But the mirrors stayed covered, in every hallway, every guest room, every bathroom near the east wing. White linen hung over the glass like the house was grieving, someone it refused to name. She was told this on her first morning by Mrs. Alvarez, the house manager. A woman with gray hair pinned so tightly it made her face look carved. "You clean what is open," Mrs. Alvarez said, handing Elena a list. "You leave what is covered." Elena glanced toward the long corridor where 4 tall mirrors leaned against the wall beneath sheets. Their shapes looked almost human under the fabric. "And if the fabric falls?" she asked. Mrs. Alvarez stopped walking, "Then you put it back without looking." The mansion sat above the city behind black iron gates and wet cypress trees. From the servants' entrance, Elena could see the skyline blurred by rain. The glass towers shining cold under the morning clouds. The house itself was older than everything around it. Built in a Spanish style with thick walls, dark wood, warm amber lamps, and corridors long enough to swallow footsteps. Men in black suits stood near doors without speaking. Their eyes moved before their bodies did how. They noticed weapons, cars, visitors. They did not notice maids. That was why Elena had been hired. Or at least, that was what she told herself. She was 32. Quiet, careful, and used to being unseen by people who believed invisibility belonged to the poor. Before this, she had cleaned hotel rooms near the airport, offices after midnight, and once, for 6 months, the penthouse of a woman who counted wine glasses more closely than she counted staff. Rafael Veyra's house paid better than all of them. Better meant rent paid on time. Better meant her mother's medication did not have to wait. She saw him for the first time at the bottom of the staircase. Just after 7, Rafael Veyra came down alone. Without the theater Elena had expected from a man people whispered about in grocery lines and laundromats. No raised voice. No cruel smile. He wore a charcoal shirt with the sleeves buttoned at the wrist, dark trousers, and the expression of someone who had slept badly for so long, he no longer expected rest to help. His men straightened when he entered. He did not look at them. He looked at the floor ahead of him. The hallway held a narrow antique mirror beside the staircase, its linen cover loose at one corner. As Rafael passed, the fabric shifted from the draft. A thin slice of glass appeared beneath it. Elena saw his body change before his face did. His hand tightened around the banister. His breathing stopped for half a second. Then one of the guards stepped forward and pulled the linen back into place. No one apologized. No one explained. Rafael continued walking as if nothing had happened. But Elena noticed the coffee in his hand had spilled over his knuckles. At dinner, no one sat with him. A long table had been prepared for 12. But only one place was used. Elena helped carry plates from the kitchen and stayed near the side wall while another maid poured water. Rafael did not eat much. He cut the meat once, moved it aside, and kept his eyes on the dark window beyond the dining room. Rain slid down the glass, catching the warm light from the chandelier. It made a broken reflection of the room. His jaw tightened whenever lightning brightened the window. Near the end of the meal, one of the younger guards made a mistake. He entered carrying a silver tray, polished too clean, its surface bright enough to reflect the room upside down. The second he stepped through the doorway, the dining room changed. 3 men reached for their jackets. Mrs. Alvarez froze near the kitchen entrance. Rafael lifted his eyes slowly to the tray, then to the guard holding it, who gave you that his voice was low. The guard swallowed. Kitchen rotation. Sir. Rafael stood, The chair scraped softly against the floor. "Remove him." The guard was not beaten in front of her. There was no shouting. That made it worse. Two men took him by the arms and walked him out through the side door, while his face went pale with confusion. The tray remained on the floor where he had dropped it. Elena stared at its shining surface and saw, for one brief second, the reflection of Rafael standing at the head of the table. Behind him, in the warped silver, there seemed to be another shape near the wall. Tall. Still. Waiting. When Elena looked up, the wall was empty. She told herself it was the tray. Distorted metal did strange things with light. Rain. Chandelier. Moving guards. Her own nerves. She picked up the tray with a cloth and carried it back to the kitchen, where every conversation had died. Mrs. Alvarez took it from her without meeting her eyes. "Do not polish anything unless you are told." Elena nodded. "I understand." Mrs. Alvarez looked toward the closed dining room doors. Her voice became quieter. "No. Girl, you do not, and pray you never do." By the third day, Elena knew the rules of the house better than the layout. No reflective trays in the dining room. No glass vases in the west corridor. No staff allowed to clean the black marble fireplace after sunset because the stone held reflections when the lamps were low. The elevator doors had been covered with matte panels. The windows in Rafael's private office were treated with dark film. Even the bathroom mirrors near his suite had been replaced by framed paintings. Landscapes of empty fields and gray seas. The other staff moved through the mansion with the discipline of people who had learned silence through punishment or pay. Elena kept her questions to herself. She had survived most of her life by understanding which rooms wanted honesty and which rooms punished it. Rafael Veyra's mansion was built from the second kind. Still, she watched. She watched because watching was safer than guessing. She watched because the house kept offering small wrong things and then daring everyone to ignore them. That afternoon, she found the cigarette. It rested beside a locked service door near the lower wine cellar, hidden behind decorative shelving where guests would never walk. The cigarette was still warm when she touched it. Rafael's men did not smoke inside the mansion. Mrs. Alvarez had repeated that rule twice during orientation because Rafael hated the smell. Elena looked at the floor. Dust covered the corridor except for one clean streak near the base of the wall, as if something narrow had scraped against it recently. She crouched lower and noticed the edge of a hidden panel sitting slightly uneven from the wall beside the shelving unit. Someone had been there moments earlier, close enough to hear her footsteps approaching. Elena stepped back instinctively and nearly dropped the towels when a voice spoke behind her. "You shouldn't stand there long." "Mateo." She turned too quickly. The older guard looked exhausted. Dark circles deep beneath his eyes. His hand rested near his jacket. "What is this place?" Elena asked quietly. Mateo stared at the service panel instead of answering. "Old house. Old construction. Someone was here. Maybe." His eyes finally met hers. "If you want to survive this job, learn the difference between seeing something and proving it." Before she could answer, another guard appeared at the far end of the corridor. Younger. Nervous. Mateo straightened immediately. "Boss wants full West Wing sweep," the younger man said. Mateo nodded once. Then, unexpectedly, he reached for Elena's elbow before leaving. His grip was brief but firm. "If Mr. Veyra tells you to stay in your room tonight, you stay there." Elena frowned. "You already said that." Mateo released her arm. "No. Yesterday he warned you. Today I am." That evening, Rafael did not come downstairs for dinner. Elena noticed because the kitchen prepared food anyway. Around 9. Mrs. Alvarez approached Elena near the pantry. "Take this upstairs." She handed her a tray with untouched food and medicine beside the plate. Elena hesitated. "Me, he asked for you specifically." The older woman's expression tightened slightly. And Elena? If he asks what the staff says about him, you tell him the truth. What does the staff say, Mrs.? Alvarez looked toward the dark hallway. That depends which week you ask. On Thursday night, the rain grew harder. It hit the windows like handfuls of gravel. Rafael's office door stood half open when Elena arrived. The fire burned lower tonight. Lamps cast warm pools of light across the bookshelves while rainwater still clung to the windows outside. Rafael sat at the desk with a file open before him, though he clearly had not read the same page for some time. His jacket lay folded across a chair nearby. Without it, he looked thinner than before, less armored. Elena placed the tray down quietly. Mrs. Alvarez sent dinner. She sent you. His voice sounded rough from exhaustion. He glanced toward the covered mirror again, before looking back to the paperwork. Did you sleep? Not much. Good. The answer came too fast. Rafael rubbed one hand over his jaw afterward, realizing how it sounded. People sleep deeply when they feel safe. Elena stayed near the desk instead of leaving immediately. And nobody here feels safe. Rafael almost smiled at that. But the expression disappeared before becoming real. Safety is temporary. He reached for the coffee instead of the food. His hand shook once while lifting the cup. Elena noticed him trying to hide it. You should eat something, she said quietly. That sounds like something my mother used to say. Was she right? Rafael looked at the untouched plate. Usually. The sound came again. Inside the walls. Softer this time. Elena froze. Rafael did not even turn his head anymore. That frightened her most of all. A person only stopped reacting to fear after living with it too long. How long has this been happening, she asked. Rafael remained silent for several seconds. Rain tapped against the windows while the fire shifted low behind the grate. 7 months. He finally said. Elena stared at him, and nobody found him. My men searched every room twice. Then maybe they searched like guards. Rafael lifted his eyes slowly, meaning Elena hesitated, aware she was speaking beyond her place. Guards look for threats. House staff look for habits. The sentence stayed between them. Rafael leaned back slightly, studying her now with something sharper than suspicion. Interest. Explain. Elena glanced toward the wall behind the fireplace. If someone hides in a house long enough, they stop thinking like an intruder. They start thinking like a resident. They leave patterns. Rafael's fingers tapped once against the coffee cup. What patterns warm cigarettes where nobody smokes? Dust moved near hidden panels. Certain hallways avoided more than others. She paused. And whoever it is understands where reflections fail. Rafael's face changed subtly at that. A realization. Or maybe confirmation. He stood and crossed toward the fireplace. Elena watched tension move through his shoulders the closer he came to the black marble. The stone reflected only fragments of the room in broken dark shapes. Rafael stopped several feet away from it. 3 guards resigned after claiming they saw someone behind me in reflections. His voice remained controlled, though barely. 1 shot at a mirror in the garage. Elena looked at him carefully. Did you see him too? Rafael answered without hesitation. Yes. Then why didn't you trust yourself? He laughed quietly at that. Tired enough for honesty, because powerful men lose their minds more often than people admit. For the first time since arriving at the mansion, Elena felt sorry for him. Not because he was dangerous, because exhaustion had hollowed him out so deeply that even fear no longer surprised him. She noticed the untouched whiskey near the desk, the medication beside dinner, the faint bruise-colored shadows beneath his eyes. Rafael Veyra looked like a man holding himself together through discipline alone. You believe me, he said suddenly. Elena frowned slightly. I saw someone. Most people stop believing what frightens them. His gaze shifted briefly toward the covered mirror. You didn't. The office lights flickered once. Both of them looked toward the fireplace instinctively. The room dimmed for half a second before stabilizing again. Nothing appeared in the reflection this time. Still. Rafael's breathing changed. He kept one hand resting lightly against the desk now, as if grounding himself physically. Then came the sound neither expected, a soft knock from inside the wall behind the fireplace. 3 slow taps. Deliberate. Human. Elena's face drained of color. Rafael closed his eyes briefly. Almost like recognition hurt worse than fear. The knock came again. Closer. Mateo burst through the office door with his weapon already drawn. 2 other guards followed behind him. Sir. Mateo's eyes moved across the room rapidly. Rafael never looked away from the wall. He wants us awake tonight, he said quietly. 1 guard stepped toward the fireplace immediately, checking seams around the stone paneling. Nothing moved. No hidden latch visible. No open corridor. The younger guard swallowed hard. Could be pipes? Mateo looked at him like he wanted to hit him for saying it aloud. Then Elena noticed something nobody else did. The dark cloth covering the tall mirror had shifted slightly near the bottom. Only an inch. Just enough for someone standing at the correct angle to see beneath it. She walked toward it before thinking, "Don't," Rafael said sharply. The force in his voice stopped everyone. Elena froze beside the mirror while silence filled the room again. Rain outside. Fire crackling softly. Guards breathing too carefully. Rafael stepped closer. His eyes fixed on the exposed edge beneath the cloth. Nobody touch it. Mateo frowned. Sir, nobody. Elena could feel fear moving through the room now, like cold air. Rafael approached slowly until he stood beside her. Up close. She could smell smoke and sleeplessness on him. His voice lowered enough that only she heard it. If he's there, he wants us afraid. Elena stared at the narrow opening beneath the cloth. And if he isn't, Rafael's answer came after a long pause. Then I am already losing my mind. For the first time since entering the mansion, Elena realized that possibility terrified him more than death. By midnight, the mansion had stopped pretending to be normal. Men moved through the corridors with weapons low against their thighs. Radios clicked softly beneath the rain. Mrs. Alvarez sent the remaining kitchen staff to their rooms and locked the pantry herself. Elena stood in Rafael's office while 2 guards inspected the fireplace for the 3rd time. They found nothing except old stone, ash, and their own fear. Rafael watched from near the desk, 1 hand in his pocket. His face controlled so tightly it looked painful. Mateo ordered the west corridor sealed. But sealing meant little in a house that had already lied about its own walls. Elena kept thinking about the warm cigarette near the cellar and the panel sitting wrong in its frame. Guards searched doors. They searched rooms. They did not search the way dust moved or how air changed temperature near old plaster. She waited until Mateo stepped away to speak. You're looking where a man would enter. Rafael turned toward her. Elena looked at the fireplace. He may already be inside the parts of the house. Nobody calls rooms. Mateo heard enough to return. With respect, she's guessing. Elena did not flinch. No, I clean. The words came out plain. But the room sharpened around them. I know which walls breathe cold. I know which floors collect dust and which ones don't. I know when a door has been opened by someone careful enough to close it almost right. Mateo's jaw tightened. Rafael lifted a hand before he could argue. Take her to the cellar corridor. Mateo stared at him. Sir. That's not safe. Rafael's eyes remained on Elena. Then make it safe. They went through the service stairs instead of the main hall. Rafael came with them, against Mateo's objections. His black coat unbuttoned, a small flashlight in his hand. The stairs smelled of bleach, old wood, and damp stone. Elena led them past the wine cellar to the decorative shelving where she had found the cigarette. The dust still held the narrow mark near the floor. Mateo crouched, ran 2 fingers along it, then stopped. His face changed. This panel's been opened. Rafael said nothing. The silence in him was worse than surprise. It took 3 men to move the shelf. Behind it, the wall looked ordinary, until Mateo pressed along the edge. A seam released with a dry click. Cold air breathed out from the darkness behind the panel. Elena stepped back before anyone told her to. The corridor beyond was narrow, barely shoulder width, lined with old brick and electrical conduit. It did not belong to the polished mansion guests saw. It belonged to another house underneath it. A house built for people who needed to move without being seen. Rafael stared into it like he was looking at an old family secret. Mateo lifted his flashlight. The beam found footprints in gray dust. More than one set, but one recent enough to hold shape. Beside the wall, someone had placed a cigarette butt into a clean ceramic dish. Careful not to leave ash behind. Elena noticed that first. Then she noticed the small strip of black fabric caught on a nail. Rafael reached for it before Mateo stopped him. He held it between 2 fingers. The fabric matched the heavy cloth tied over the mirror in his office. The man had been near the mirror recently, close enough to touch it. A sound traveled through the narrow corridor ahead of them. Soft, deliberate. A scrape of shoe against stone. All 3 guards raised their weapons. Elena's heartbeat moved into her throat. Rafael stepped in front of her before she understood he had moved. He did it without drama, without looking back. Like his body had chosen before, his mind could argue. Mateo whispered. Back. Rafael did not. Another sound came from farther inside the passage. Then a low metallic clink echoed once and stopped. The corridor went silent again. Listening to them, they followed only 20 feet before the passage split into 2 directions. One led toward the office wall. The other sloped downward, possibly beneath the east wing. Old markings had been scratched into the brick beside the split numbers. Arrows. Initials half covered by dust. Elena lifted the flashlight from Mateo's belt without asking, and aimed it low. The dust on the left path had been disturbed often. The right path held older prints. She pointed left. He uses this one. Mateo looked annoyed despite being afraid. How do you know? Because he stopped caring if he left marks there. Rafael looked at the path she chose. Then at Mateo. Send 2 men around to the office. Quietly. Mateo spoke into his radio in a murmur. Static answered first. Then nothing. He tried again. No response. The mansion above them seemed suddenly far away. Rafael's eyes sharpened. Signal's dead here. Elena felt the walls closing in. The hidden corridor had swallowed the radios. The guards. The clean logic of security. Then, from somewhere ahead, a voice whispered Rafael's name. Barely audible. Intimate enough to feel obscene. Rafael. The guards surged forward. But Rafael lifted one fist and stopped them. Elena saw the effect of the voice on him. His shoulders locked. His face remained composed. Yet something old moved beneath it. Recognition. Pain. Mateo whispered. Who is that? Rafael's mouth tightened. Someone who should be dead. The corridor lights above them flickered through exposed wiring. For one fractured second, Elena saw another passage beyond the bend. And at the far edge of it, a man's coat disappearing into darkness. They did not catch him. By the time the guards reached the bend, the passage had emptied into 3 more routes and a maintenance hatch leading upward. The hatch was open. Rain smell drifted through it from somewhere near the garden level. Mateo cursed under his breath. Rafael stood still beneath the low ceiling, breathing through his nose, his face pale in the flashlight glow. Elena saw blood at his knuckles, where his hand had closed too hard around the brick. Sir, Mateo said carefully. We need to move you to the safe house. Rafael answered without looking at him. He knows the safe houses. The return to the office felt different. The mansion above them no longer seemed grand. It seemed porous. Every wall might hold a passage. Every covered mirror might be less of a superstition than a failed warning. Elena washed dust from her hands in the service sink and watched gray water circle the drain. When she looked up, Rafael stood in the doorway. He had sent the others ahead. For a moment, neither spoke. The rain had softened outside, but the house remained tense around them, full of men pretending fear could be managed through orders. "You should leave tonight," Rafael said. Elena dried her hand slowly. Anywhere I arrange," and if he follows, his eyes hardened. But not at her. "He won't." Elena looked at him with the kind of steadiness that often made powerful people uncomfortable. "You don't know that." He stepped closer, his voice low. "I know what happens to people near me." The confession landed without decoration. It was the most honest thing he had said all night. Elena folded the towel once, then again, then stopped, deciding alone. Rafael looked at her, as if she had crossed a line no one else had dared approach. Maybe she had. Elena felt fear after speaking, but she did not apologize. "He has been using your fear like a map," she continued. "Every mirror removed, every room changed, every guard punished for seeing what you saw. You keep reacting, and he keeps learning where to press." Raphael's jaw tightened. "You think I invited this?" "No." Her voice softened. "I think you have been surviving it alone so long that survival started looking like control." For several seconds, the only sound was the rainwater ticking through a gutter outside. Raphael's expression did not break. It loosened, just enough to reveal exhaustion underneath. "You speak very freely for someone who should be afraid of me." Elena met his eyes. "I am afraid of this house." That answer reached him more deeply than flattery would have. He looked toward the dark hallway beyond her, where his men moved in and out of shadow. "Good," he said quietly. "Fear tells the truth when loyalty does not." The silence between them lasted long enough to become something else. Raphael's eyes moved across her face once, carefully, the way a person looks at something they cannot afford to misread. Then he reached into his pocket. He placed a small key on the counter between them. "My mother kept a private archive beneath the library. Old plans, renovations, staff records from before I inherited the house. Mateo does not have this key. Mrs. Alvarez does not have it." Elena looked down at it but did not pick it up. "Why give it to me?" Raphael's face remained guarded. "Because you look at things before deciding what they are." Elena understood then that this was not trust in the warm sense. It was the first dangerous shape of it. He was handing her access to the parts of his life other people had used against him. The key sat between them, small and dull under the service light. She picked it up. "If I find something, I tell you only..." Raphael nodded once. "Only me." Then his voice lowered. "And if you hear my men asking what you know, you tell them nothing." Elena looked up sharply. "You don't trust Mateo." Raphael's answer came too late to be reassuring. "I trust him enough to know what trust can cost." The archive beneath the library was colder than the corridor. It opened behind a row of old legal books and descended into a narrow room lined with metal cabinets. Raphael did not come inside at first. He stood at the threshold while Elena switched on a green banker's lamp. Dust lifted in the weak light. The files were labeled by year. Estate wing. Contractor. Staff. Security revision. Nothing dramatic. That made it feel more real. Terrible things often hid inside records nobody thought to read. They worked in silence for nearly an hour. Elena searched renovation maps while Raphael reviewed old personnel files from a chair near the door, refusing to let his back face the hallway. She noticed that without comment, the old blueprints showed spaces missing from newer versions, crawl passages near the fireplace, servant routes behind guest rooms, a drainage access beneath the garden wall. Then she found a maintenance diagram marked with red pencil. Someone had circled the private office, the dining room, and Raphael's bedroom. The handwriting looked old, The paper did not. Rafael came to stand beside her. He was close enough that she felt the restraint in him. The effort of keeping still. Where did you find this estate revisions? Year before your father died. Rafael's eyes moved over the red circles. His face drained slowly of color. Elena waited. He touched the edge of the paper. Not the markings. This handwriting, he said. His voice had changed. It belonged to Tomas Ibarra. Elena knew the name, by the way. The room reacted to it. Even with only 2 people inside. Who was he? Rafael looked at the circled bed. My father's security chief. The next file made the air heavier. Tomas Ibarra had been removed from the organization during an internal purge 11 years earlier. The official record used clean language disloyalty. Concealed assets. Termination of command. Elena understood enough to know what it meant. Beneath that file was an older staff roster listing family dependents allowed on estate grounds during extended operations. One name had been underlined twice in faded ink. Adrián Ibarra. Age 13. Temporary residence. East Service Quarters. Rafael stared at the line for a long time. He had a son. Elena said quietly. Rafael did not answer. His silence confirmed it. Elena looked back at the blueprint. A child had lived inside this house once. In rooms, staff barely remembered. A child who might have watched men move through hidden corridors. Learned the walls. I learned where adults kept secrets. Rafael sat down slowly. The file still in his hand. For the first time, he looked less like a man being hunted by an enemy, and more like someone facing the shape of an old debt. I was 24 when Tomas died, he said. Old enough to understand. Young enough to obey. Elena heard the sentence beneath the sentence. He had not ordered everything. He had not stopped it either. The distinction did not comfort him. Before she could respond, a noise came from above them. A door closing somewhere in the library. Rafael rose immediately and turned off the lamp with one hand. Darkness folded over the archive. Elena felt his hand close around her wrist. Firm but careful. Guiding her behind the cabinets. Footsteps crossed the floor overhead. Slow. Searching. Then a voice called down through the hidden entrance. Mr. Veyra. It was Mateo. Rafael did not answer. Elena stood close enough to hear his breathing. Controlled but shallow. Mateo called again. Quieter this time. Sir. Mrs. Alvarez said the maid was with you. A pause. We need to know where she is. Elena felt Rafael's grip tighten once. Then release. As if he realized he was holding too hard. The footsteps above moved closer to the shelf entrance. For one terrible moment, she understood what Rafael had meant about trust costing something. Every person in the house had become both shield and possible opening. Mateo did not enter. After several seconds, the footsteps retreated. A door closed above them. Rafael waited longer than Elena thought necessary before turning the lamp back on. His face had gone still again. But now Elena could see the calculation behind it. He may only be worried, she whispered. Rafael looked toward the ceiling. He may be. And if he isn't, Rafael folded the old roster and slipped it inside his coat. Then Adrian is not only inside my walls. He is inside my house's habits. When they returned to the service level, Elena's room had been opened. The lock was intact. The door rested exactly as she had left it. At first, she thought nothing had changed. Then she saw the small vase near the window turn toward the bed instead of the door. Her folded blanket had been shifted by 2 inches. The bedside lamp was angled toward the mirrorless frame above the dresser, where a landscape painting had been placed over what used to be glass. On her pillow lay the cigarette butt from the hidden corridor. Set neatly in the center like an offering, Rafael entered behind her and stopped. The room was too small for his presence. Too ordinary for the kind of danger he carried. Elena could not speak. The violation was quiet. Almost polite. and that made it unbearable. Someone had stood beside her bed while she was gone. Someone had touched the few things she owned. Rafael picked up the cigarette with a handkerchief and looked at the cold ash. His voice, when it came, was lower than she had heard it before. Pack nothing. Elena turned to him. What, you stay where I can see the door? She almost argued. Pride rose first. Then fear. Then the knowledge that both were useless if someone could enter locked rooms at will. I won't be treated like furniture moved for your convenience, she said. Rafael looked at her sharply. For a moment the old authority returned to his face. Then it faded under something more careful. You're right. He placed the cigarette into a glass evidence envelope from his pocket. I am not asking because I own the house. I am asking because he has chosen you as proof that I cannot protect what matters. The word matters changed the room. Rafael seemed to hear it after saying it. Elena heard it too, and looked away first. Outside. Thunder rolled far over the city. No confession followed. He did not soften into something false. He remained dangerous, exhausted, and difficult to trust. Yet he stood between her and the open hallway without performing bravery for anyone. There is a sitting room beside my office, he said. No windows. One on trance. You can sleep there until morning. Elena swallowed. And you, Rafael, looked toward the dark corridor. I stopped sleeping before you came. The blackout began at 1:17 in the morning. Elena knew the exact minute because the antique clock inside the sitting room clicked once before the lamps died. Darkness swallowed the mansion instantly. Somewhere below, generators attempted to engage. Failed. Then fell silent. The house changed with the lights gone. Without warm lamps and polished floors. The mansion felt older, colder, like the hidden corridors had finally become the real structure, and the elegant rooms above them were only decoration built afterward. Elena stood from the couch immediately. Outside the sitting room, footsteps moved fast through the corridor. Voices overlapped through dead radios. Then came Rafael's voice through the door. Calm. Controlled. Elena. A pausa. Elena. She unlocked it at once. Rafael stood outside holding a flashlight and a pistol low against his leg. Shadows cut sharply across his face from the emergency lighting beginning to pulse faintly red at the ends of the hallway. Stay behind me, he said. Elena looked toward the office. The generators disabled manually. Mateo appeared from the stairwell with 2 guards behind him. Backup powers dead in the west wing, he said. Sweat darkened his collar despite the cold. Security room lost cameras 10 minutes before the outage. Rafael's eyes narrowed slightly at that timing. Elena noticed. Mateo noticed her noticing. For one uncomfortable second, all 3 understood the same thing. Whoever controlled the hidden corridors had planned this carefully. Rafael motioned toward the office. Inside. Now. They entered quickly, while 1 guard remained outside the door. The office looked different in emergency light. The fire had burned low, leaving the black marble fireplace dark and reflective again. The covered mirror stood beside it, the cloth hanging perfectly still. Rafael handed Elena the flashlight. Keep it low. She obeyed automatically. Mateo checked the walls while the younger guard searched behind the bookshelves. Rafael remained near the desk, listening, instead of moving. Elena realized that was how he survived now. He trusted sound more than sight. Then, softly beneath the storm outside, came the same 3 knocks from inside the wall. Nobody spoke. The younger guard stepped toward the fireplace too quickly. Rafael grabbed his sleeve hard enough to stop him. Wait. The knock came again. Slower this time. Almost patient. Elena aimed the flashlight toward the marble without meaning to. A faint reflection appeared across the polished stone. Rafael. Mateo. Herself. And farther back near the office door, another figure standing perfectly still between the red emergency lights. Elena's breath caught. Behind us, Mateo turned instantly. weapon raised. The doorway was empty. The younger guard rushed out into the corridor. His footsteps vanished around the corner. Then a gunshot cracked through the darkness. One shot only. Matteo cursed and ran after him with the second guard. Rafael started forward, then stopped when Elena grabbed his sleeve. "Listen." He froze. Underneath the fading echo of the gunshot came another sound much closer. Breathing. Inside the office, Elena slowly turned the flashlight toward the covered mirror. The cloth had moved again. Not from wind. From behind it. Rafael raised the pistol carefully. Though Elena could see his hand trembling now. Not from fear alone. Recognition. "Adrian," he said quietly. The room stayed silent. Elena felt the shift beside her when Rafael stopped pretending this was uncertainty. He knew the man was there. "You've been inside my house long enough?" Rafael continued. "Come out." For several seconds, nothing happened. Then a voice answered from behind the mirror cloth. Calm. Educated. Younger than Elena expected. "It stopped being your house a long time ago." The cloth moved aside slowly. A man stepped from the narrow, hidden opening behind the mirror frame. Thin from years, lived in shadows. Dark coat hanging close to his body. He looked younger than Rafael, but older than revenge should have allowed. One side of his face carried an old scar near the jawline. His eyes never left Rafael. "You finally looked," Adrian said softly. Rafael did not lower the gun. "You killed one of my guards tonight." Adrian's expression remained empty. "No." He saw me and panicked. He glanced briefly toward Elena. "She doesn't panic. That's why you kept her close." Elena watched Rafael carefully. She saw guilt moving beneath his control now. "Old enough to have roots. Your father chose his side," Rafael said. Adrian laughed once under his breath. "That's the sentence they used." Rain hammered the windows harder. Red emergency light pulsed across the office walls like a slow wound. "I was 13. Adrian continued. "I listened from inside the walls while your men argued about whether to bury him whole." Elena felt Rafael go still beside her. Adrian stepped no closer. But his voice carried years inside it. "Do you know what children remember?" he asked quietly. Footsteps afterward. Men washing blood from rings before dinner. Someone laughing in the kitchen while my father disappeared beneath concrete. Rafael lowered the pistol slightly. Matteo returned to the office entrance then. Breathing hard. Weapon raised toward Adrian immediately. "Move away from him." Matteo barked. Adrian smiled faintly at that. "There's the loyal dog." Rafael spoke without looking away from Adrian. "Matteo." "Don't." Matteo ignored him and stepped farther inside. Elena saw Adrian notice the angle of the guard's reflection in the fireplace before anyone else did. Everything happened fast after that. Adrian reached into the hidden corridor opening. Matteo fired first. The bullet shattered part of the mirror frame. Elena ducked instinctively as glass exploded across the floor. Rafael grabbed her shoulder and pulled her down behind the desk. Another shot echoed, then silence returned too suddenly. Elena looked up. Matteo stood frozen near the doorway, staring downward. A thin wire stretched across the office entrance at ankle height, almost invisible in the dark. Adrian had said it earlier during the blackout alabla. Matteo's shot had triggered the mechanism hidden inside the wall panel beside the door. A steel barrier slammed down from the ceiling, separating Matteo from the others. One guard screamed somewhere beyond it. Adrian vanished back into the hidden corridor instantly. Rafael surged forward before Elena could stop him. "Rafael." He ignored her and disappeared through the narrow opening behind the mirror with flashlight and pistol drawn. Elena followed because leaving him alone inside those walls suddenly felt more dangerous than fear itself. The hidden passage behind the mirror sloped downward sharply beneath the mansion. Emergency lights flickered weakly through old maintenance wiring, painting the corridor in dim red pulses. Rafael moved ahead of her faster than before, years of familiarity guiding him through darkness. Elena heard Adrian's footsteps somewhere deeper ahead. Then Rafael stopped abruptly at an intersection beneath the east wing. "He's circling back," he said. Elena frowned. Back where Rafael looked upward toward the ceiling above them. "My office?" Adrian knew Rafael psychologically. He understood the mansion as movement and reaction. Elena suddenly realized the truth before Rafael did. He doesn't want to escape. Rafael turned toward her sharply. What Elena listened to the distant sounds above them. Guards. Shouting. The storm. He wants you chasing him through the walls while he returns to the room where the mirrors are. Rafael's face changed instantly. He turned and ran back through the corridor with Elena beside him. The passage felt narrower now. The air thinner with every step. When they reached the office again, the steel barrier had reopened. Mateo stood injured near the desk. Blood running from a cut across his forehead. The younger guard was gone. So was Adrian. At first, the room appeared empty. Then Elena saw movement in the black marble reflection near the fireplace. A silhouette standing directly behind Rafael once more. Closer than before. "Don't turn," she whispered. Rafael froze. The reflection showed Adrian emerging silently from behind the office door with a knife low against his side. He was using the reflection angle exactly the way Elena predicted. For the first time in months, Rafael did not avoid the reflection. He looked directly into it. Elena saw the effort it took. The years of fear pressing against that single moment. "Now," she said quietly. Rafael moved before Adrian expected it. He pivoted sideways instead of backward, knocking the knife aside while driving Adrian hard against the bookshelf. The impact sent books crashing across the floor. Mateo lunged in immediately, helping pin Adrian before he could reach the hidden corridor again. The struggle lasted seconds. The breathing afterward lasted much longer. Adrian stopped resisting first. Blood darkened one sleeve where broken glass had cut him during the fight. Rafael stood over him, breathing hard. One hand braced against the desk for balance. Their eyes held each other in silence. "You wanted me afraid," Rafael said quietly. Adrian looked toward the shattered mirror frame. "No." His voice sounded tired suddenly. "I wanted you awake." After they dragged Adrian from the office, nobody spoke for several seconds. The only sound left was broken glass shifting beneath shoes. Mateo leaned against the wall with blood running down his temple. Guards moved through corridors that suddenly felt too small for all of them. Rafael stayed near the fireplace without moving. His gun still hung loose in one hand. He kept staring at the shattered mirror frame even after the room was empty. That was when Elena understood the real damage Adrian had left behind. Fear had trained Rafael to keep looking over his shoulder long after the danger was gone. It had not been 7 months of hiding in walls. It had been 11 years of a 13-year-old boy learning exactly which man to become in order to return here. A soft knock came at sunrise. 2 taps. Pause. Then her name twice. Elena opened the door carefully. Rafael stood outside alone. His shirt sleeves rolled. Dried blood near one cuff that did not belong to him. Exhaustion sat heavily beneath his eyes. But something else had changed too. The restless alertness inside him had quieted. Not vanished. Quieted. He glanced toward the office behind him. "The mirrors are being uncovered this morning." Elena studied his face. "All of them. Not all." His voice lowered slightly. "One is enough for today." She followed him into the office after the workers left. The shattered frame had been replaced temporarily by a tall antique mirror from another room. No cloth covered it now. Rafael stopped several feet away from the glass. Elena remained near the doorway at first, giving him space without announcing it. Morning light mixed with the dying firelight across the reflection. Rafael looked at himself for a long time, as if reacquainting himself with a person he had avoided becoming. "I kept thinking if I stopped looking," he said quietly, he would stop existing. Elena leaned lightly against the doorframe. "People inside walls don't disappear because we close our eyes." Rafael almost smiled at that. A tired, real expression this time. He looked toward her through the mirror rather than directly. You stayed anyway. Elena considered the room around them, the shattered books, the hidden passage behind the repaired wall. The exhaustion carved into him deeper than any bruise. You asked me to. Raphael's gaze held hers in the reflection. No one else it did. Outside, rain finally stopped falling over the city. The mansion stood the same as it always had. Same iron gates. Same wet cypress trees. Same long corridors where footsteps still disappeared too quickly into the quiet. But the mirrors were open now, and the man standing in front of one of them had, for the first time in 7 months, nothing left to hide from except himself.